Sorry, I can't. I don't know what happened. My entire everything just vanished. Okay, well, I'm Ben. I first want to start by just thanking all of you for being here. By the way, can you see me or is it just this?
I can see you too, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so thank you all for being here and for wanting to get involved in this. I'm really excited about ASC and I have a lot of hopes and dreams for the future with it. I want to kind of just walk through, I roughly structured a PowerPoint without rehearsing it, like I said, so I'm just going to sort of make my way through it and say what I think is relevant. I've been trying to be as clear as I can on the Instagram, posting like our goals and what we kind of want to do with ASC. But so you may have already gotten the impression that our two goals are to inform, and by that I mean answer questions, educate, share information, and to connect. And by that I mean expand your network within science. When you first joined, I said, I encourage you to put your screen on. I think we should, see each other. I want us to connect. I want us to discuss, our science, our careers, our experiences. I think that there's a lot of opportunity here with us all being in the science field or interested in the science field. And there's really a big problem with science. I always kind of say that if you're interested in a career in business, for example, you go to college, you get a degree in business, and then you apply for a job and you start your career. Science is not so simple. You need to, get a bachelor's degree, BS or BA. What should I major in? Okay, after that, if I want to do science, do I do a master's? Do I do a PhD? What's an MD compared to a PhD? After that, what do you do if I want to go into industry or academia? There are way too many questions and the biggest problem is that they're not easy to find the answers to, because the only way to really understand these things is to talk directly with people who have been through this, and that is scientists. So I've found in my experience that the easiest way to learn about these things is to talk with my professors and my colleagues in the science field. And that's not always available or easy. People are busy. So I kind of wanted to create a digital platform for us to do that and to help newcomers to the science field establish kind of a foundational understanding of what they'll need to know as they progress through. And in doing that, we can also connect with one another so that in the future, 10, 15 years from now or whatever, if a bunch of us do stick in the field of science and we all have labs or we all work in industry and we have these connections, and having connections within science is extremely valuable. For a long time, I thought that networking was only important for, like business, like LinkedIn. Everyone has LinkedIn. Everyone wants to find each other and look for jobs. And that's not really how it is for science. Science, we don't really use LinkedIn, or at least I don't. So I thought networking wasn't valuable. But then I realized when you apply for grants, if you're a PI, if you're running a research lab, you apply for grants. The people who review your grants are people in the field who study similar things to you. If you don't know those people, they have no reason to review your grant, and be nice at all. Especially if they're your competitors. When you're submitting papers to journals, the people who review your papers and decide whether it gets published in that journal or not are your colleagues, and they're the people who study the same thing as you. So if we can all know each other, currently there's a problem in science. I think that there's a lot of competition and there is a lot of collaboration and connection, but it's not really everywhere. It's not everyone in the field isn't friends with one another. And I think that as the up and coming generation of scientists, we have an opportunity to connect with one another and to establish a large network of friends and colleagues rather than, competitors and disjointed labs. So that's sort of my hope for this. My vision, our vision, is to have regular events. That's still getting sorted out. So I also want to say, sorry if you received 1,000 emails the first time that we emailed you. I kind of just want to be frank and straightforward that we are figuring this out as we go. And there are some, speed bumps and errors. So apologies for the emails that you all received. But like I said, we're figuring this out. So we want to do regular events. I'm not sure how regular, maybe every 2 weeks, maybe every month, maybe every week. I guess I can ask you all what you think, maybe at the end. And then I also want to establish a large network. So like I said, the bigger we are, the more people we can help and the more of a connected scientific world we can create. So if you have friends that may be interested, definitely tell them, get them involved. Again, it's free to join. I want to make this as helpful as possible for everyone. So, okay, so talking about future events, what I'm sort of planning right now is, so besides being an introduction to Ask, today's meeting is a Q&A with me because I'm available. And in the future, we'll have Q&As with other people discussing other relevant topics. So, I can answer these questions that I'm answering today about what it's like to be a grad student and what you should do as an undergrad, because I've been through that process. But maybe I'll have someone who runs a lab come in and talk and answer questions. Someone who works in industry who comes in or will come in and answer questions. So I want to have Q&A sessions repeatedly throughout this, but I also want to have guest speakers to just sort of present information and present the research. And I also am planning to do networking sessions. So when you all joined and you fill out the Google form, I had you write what your interest was. I had you select an interest, and I plan to start by grouping all of our members into groups based on their interests and sort of facilitating networking sessions where you can get to know the people who you are in, who you share interests with. And, it's awesome. I posted on the Instagram, we have people from all over the world. It's amazing. And to be able to do this digitally is really cool. So I want to facilitate the networking opportunities for everyone, including myself. Obviously, I also want to learn and gain from this. But I am open to suggestions, anything, any meeting events or anything, you want to bring in certain people. I think that as we grow, right now there are about somewhere around 250 members. As we grow, I think it'll create more and more opportunities to bring in influential people. If I reach out to a very established, very famous scientist and I tell them, hey, I have a network of 2,000 students who are interested in science and they want to hear you speak, all you have to do is join a Zoom meeting. They might be likely to do that. And I think that, as we grow, it'll become more inspiring for people to come and join us as well. So who I am, and like I said, the Q&As are going to be with different people. The only reason I'm giving a introduction to me is so you understand who I am and why my input even matters or why you should trust it. So I'm Ben Rein. I'm a neuroscience PhD student at SUNY Buffalo. In my research, I'm looking at genetics, genetic predispositions to autism spectrum disorder, and kind of looking at the neurobiology of what's happening in autism and also just generally in social behavior. I'm going to be graduating in May with my PhD, which I'm very excited about, obviously, and I'm sticking in academia and doing my postdoc. And by that, I mean I will be pursuing a track into being a professor and running my own research lab. And the next step between a PhD and that is the postdoc, which is basically a postdoctoral. So you have your doctorate, you're working in a research lab in a more independent manner. So I actually am in the process of applying to my postdocs right now. I just sent out a very important application earlier. So my story is basically that as an undergrad, I was interested in psychology, and I was on track to graduate in 3 years. And then I really, what happened is I had this terrifying nightmare where I woke up and I was blown away that my brain was so powerful that it could create this crazy nightmare. And I thought, wow, okay, you know what? I'm pretty interested in behavior, but I'm also interested in the brain and how it generates the behaviors that we, observe in people. So I decided to look into neuroscience a bit more. But like I said, I was on track to graduate in 3 years. This was already a year and a half in. So I'm 50% of the way through, realizing I want to change my entire path. So I had to basically do like rapid fire learning. I worked in 4 different research labs, one over the next 4 semesters, each of the next semesters. I went to ASC Society for Neuroscience, this huge neuroscience meeting, and I spoke to as many people as I could. I joined Neuroscience Club, and I basically just kind of like smushed in as much knowledge as I could, because realistically, this was in the fall, the end of the fall of my second year. So I had the spring semester, and then in the next fall, I was applying to graduate school. So I had to learn as much as I could before I applied. And I kind of, having gone through that process, it's important to me to provide those resources in an accessible way to people who are maybe going through the same thing or are, dead set on neuroscience or dead set on whatever it is, chemistry, physics, and you're just kind of looking for information. So, okay, so you may if you're here, you may know me from TikTok. That's a whole story on its own that I won't talk about. But when my page started growing on TikTok, I began receiving a lot of DMs from people on Instagram saying things like, hey, I'm interested in neuroscience. Tell me about your path. Just kind of a lot of questions that are expected. Because again, the best way to get information is from people in the field, and it's hard to find people in the field. So that kind of promoted this idea that maybe I should start an organization where people can get all this information. And I had that from the beginning, but it kind of developed as I went. This is also partly inspired by COVID. So I wish I could see you guys. I'm going to try to get this. Let me do this really quick. I'm going to stop this share. Okay, so I can see you now. By a show of hands, can you just show me who has had some sort of event, like an internship or something, anything canceled because of COVID that's related to research or science or anything? Yeah, so from the page that I'm on, I could see a good number of hands. So, 2 participants raised hand. Thank you. I don't even know how you guys did that. Yeah, so this is common. I mean, a lot of people have things fall apart because of coronavirus, not only related to science, but all different things. So I'm hoping that by creating these opportunities to meet each other online and to gain knowledge online, we can sort of compensate for the loss of opportunity that was induced by COVID. So, okay, I guess I'm going to stop the share again for a second. Any questions before I'm going to get into the Q&A with the questions that I described, but does anyone have any questions? If you do, you can unmute yourself and say them. You could send them in the chat just about ask or, anything else. I'll give it a solid 30 seconds here. I'll have a sip of water.
Ben, are you going to want other PhD people to answer questions too?
So, yeah, I'm kind of going based on the timing. I definitely, like I said, this is a group. This is a networking and environment thing, or group thing. So I definitely want you to, if you have something that you would like to add while I'm discussing this, definitely feel free to chime in. And since I won't be able to see, I was going to say just direct message me in the chat, but since I won't be able to see the chat, you can just unmute yourself and stop talking and I'll let you go ahead. So Aku asked, can I get a PhD without an internship? So if by an internship you mean research experience, because at least here in the US, I'm not sure if you're in the US, we don't really do internships in science. I'm just going to assume that you mean research experience broadly. You can, but it's more difficult, and I'm going to sort of answer that when I get to the how can I make myself a strong applicant for grad school. So, okay, let me go back to share screen. So yeah, again, if you have anything you want to add, just please start talking and I'll let you go ahead. So these are the questions that I'll be answering based on the Google form that you all completed. So thank you for doing that and being interactive and engaged. I appreciate that. So I'm just going to go ahead and start on the first one. What advice do you have for undergraduate students? So I tried to include as much as I could in here, just kind of thinking about it briefly, but there may be more. And again, if you have input, please chime in. So the first thing is to get research experience as early as possible. This is something that people told me as soon as I started in undergrad in psychology. People said, if you want to do research, if you want to do a PhD or grad school, get research experience. If you're about to start your first semester in college, that's fine. I think, the longer you can be in a lab and the more research experience you can gain, the more attractive you'll be to graduate programs and the more you'll learn about yourself and your interests. And you'll also be kind of preparing yourself in advance for graduate school. So that's always good. People often ask what classes to take. This seems very obvious, but if you're confused about what classes are best for you to take, just take the ones that sound the most interesting to you. Especially if they are requirements. So if you're a neuroscience major and you have to take an elective and there is developmental neuroscience, neurodegenerative diseases, and neurodevelopmental diseases, just pick, if you're interested in Alzheimer's and you want to research it or whatever, then take the neurodegenerative one. This seems like really obvious advice, but the more you can learn about the things you're interested in, again, it's just preparing you for graduate school. It's also makes you attractive to graduate programs. So I'll get to that later on, but they want to see that you've taken the relevant curriculum. So you may not want to, but it definitely helps to connect with your favorite professors. And really what I mean by that is just at the end of your, you know, if you have a class and you think the professor's cool, you like the way they teach, you're interested in their research, just go up to them at the end of the class and talk to them. Just, you know, basically be friends with them. A lot of professors are looking for standout students to sort of connect with. And it's really nice having faculty that you're close with, because you can go to them for letters of recommendation, you can go to them for advice. I mean, this is typically how people get the sort of information that I'm sort of trying to present with Ask. You can also go to office hours. Definitely, that's also just a general tip. If you're taking a class and you're struggling, go to the office hours. So the professor will have 1 hour a week where they just devote the time to answering questions and letting students visit them. So go there, ask them the questions. That is a definite power move that will help you in your classes. So extracurriculars. I have sort of an anecdotal note on this. As a undergrad, my first year, I got involved with psychology club. I was the publicity chair. My second year, I was the vice president. My third year, I was the president. So I thought, this is so great. You know, I'm applying to grad school. They're going to be so impressed that I'm the president of psychology club. And I went on my graduate school interviews. No one said a word to me about it. None of the professors I interviewed with, you know, even seemed to know about it. They didn't ask me any, you know, they didn't say in the interviews, oh, what sort of extracurriculars did you do? Were you involved in any clubs? So for that reason, I was a little disappointed by that, because I thought, it really was a great experience for me. I gained a lot of leadership skills, and it was a good experience for me to grow, but it wasn't as much value as I thought on my CV or my applications. So I would just say, if you're interested in a club or whatever, and you want to get involved in a governor or government role or whatever, administrative role in the club, do it because you like the club or you like the people. Don't do it because you think that it'll enhance your application. But again, this is anecdotal. This may differ for other people. Others may have had different experiences. So that's just my personal experience. Fifth is to consider early graduation. So in my very first year, I went to my counselor, my academic counselor, and she said, hey, you can probably graduate early if you want. And I was like, no way, because I only had like 6 AP credits, which is like 2 classes. So I thought there was no way. And she said, yeah, no, if you take this many credits, you take one summer class each summer, you can graduate a whole year ahead. And I was like, okay, wow, that's great. Sign me up for that. Let's do that. And so I was kind of blown away by how easy it was to graduate early, or how accessible it was. And so if that's something you're interested in, especially if you're thinking, I'm going to go to a PhD or an MD or an MD PhD or master's, whatever, and you're thinking, I don't want to be in school for that long, definitely look into it. There's probably the opportunity for you to stack on a few more credits and graduate at least a semester early and give yourself a head start. But I will say that me graduating a year early may have put me at a disadvantage, because I didn't get as much relevant coursework, and I think that hurt me on my grad school applications. So if you are graduating early, make sure you're taking the classes that you're supposed to be taking. Take the hard classes. Don't skimp out on the biology, the chemistry, the biochemistry, those things, because that can hurt you. And lastly, YOLO. This is kind of a joke, but kind of serious. This is just a personal thing. My time in college flew by, and looking back on it, I hardly, I remember it, but it's like, I can't believe how quickly it passed. So have fun. Don't spend all your time there studying and, staying in, meet people, go to parties, whatever, have fun and meet and go to clubs and stuff. You only do college once, and it's, looking back, probably the most exciting time of my life. So just enjoy yourself and don't be too focused on work, because you have a whole life of work ahead of you. So how do I get research experience? This is a very common question, and I have a very streamlined answer that you may have heard from me before. First, by the way, this is an important time to add, I'm going to send this PowerPoint out to all the members. So if you forget what I'm saying, you can just go through here, and hopefully this will be informative enough. So first, find your department's faculty website. And I'm just going to do this. If I go to university, yeah.
You have comments in the chat. questions
Oh,
in the chat from your previous slide.
all right. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to stop the share. Okay, so Tasha said, what college were you at? I was at West Virginia University. Is it easy to graduate early in most STEM major colleges? That I don't know. It may be different. You know, every school has different requirements. So definitely just talk to your academic counselor. I can't speak for any other schools. How helpful were AP credits? Like I said, I had 6 or something like that. One thing that is super important that I forgot, AP credits are definitely important. Take them if you can. But another thing that's important is that I took a placement test for a Spanish course in college, and I placed into the 3rd level class. And there was a program that if you get like an A or B in the course you placed into, then you get credits for that course and all the courses below it. So I took Spanish 3 and I got an A, and I got 9 credits for that one course. So also look into things like that, because that can obviously help your graduation. The CLEP exam. I'm not positive. I'm sorry, I don't really know. I'm not sure. It may be the exam I'm referring to. That sounds pretty familiar, so I'm not sure, but it may be. Steve, did you have something to say?
I just wanted to point out one of the things for me that was most important was whenever you're connecting with your professors, as you mentioned, you don't want a rudimentary, like really simple letter of recommendation. You want to have an actual personal letter of recommendation from them where they know who you are. You may have worked in their lab, more than just like taking a single course with them, because most of the time, if you've just taken a single course and you're asking them for a letter of recommendation, they will do it. But at the same time, there's going to be no impact whatsoever from it.
That's a very good point. And by the way, Steve, who just said that, is another PhD student who I came into the program with. So he's at the same stage as I am. So, but yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, everyone gets letters of recommendation from someone, and it's generic. And as Steve said, if they can personalize it and talk about who you are and actually know who you are, that'll not only make them more likely to write the letter, but it'll also be a better letter. So, okay, so this is kind of what I'm talking about. University of Buffalo Neuroscience. So just look up your department. Okay, neuroscience program. I'm gonna click that, and I'm gonna find the faculty. Faculty. And here we go. We have all the faculty. So this is step 1. Now what you're going to want to do, every professor has a research description. My research is aimed at understanding the roles of innate and adaptive immune systems, etc. So everybody has this at every university. You can look at this is like going to be their grant funding, that you can look at their publications. Important note, these are typically out of date. A lot of professors have their own research website where they have more information, or you can look for their Google Scholar. This isn't her, but this is someone else with the same name. But whatever, let's say this was her, then you could look at her most recent papers to make sure that you're up to date. So, okay, step 1, find your your department's faculty website, read through every professor's research description. You don't have to read the entire thing. If you start reading it and you realize this is not what I'm interested in, you don't have to finish it, of course. But which ones interest you? Which ones stand out? So obviously the first thing to consider is the topic. You'll be able to tell which topics excite you more than others. You'll start reading and you'll think this is exciting, or no, this isn't. But in addition to just the general topic and the research focus, you also want to look at what system is being used. And when I say system, I really mean organism. So a lot of people do like imaging studies, MRI, DTI, things like that in humans, where they bring in people and they image them. Some people do research in monkeys. If you're at places like Princeton or whatever, a lot of places like this, these big neuroscience departments have monkeys that they do research in. Most people do mouse or rat. I should have put that in there. You can do zebrafish, fruit flies. People use a lot of different systems. And this is mostly relevant because you may not want to work with mice. You may feel that it's gross or you're just uncomfortable doing it. If you're doing neuroscience or something like that, a lot of the time this is going to involve pretty intense stuff, like, like brain surgeries. You got to be ready for that kind of stuff. So if you shy away from that, definitely don't sign up for a lab like that. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at labs. Another thing is the lab productivity. So I showed you their publications and how to find like their, like where they publish or look at all their papers. That's obviously important. If you want to publish in undergrad, if you want to publish a paper, which is the best thing that can possibly happen, you want to make sure that the lab is publishing papers. If they publish a paper every 3 years, the chance of you publishing there is very low. But if they publish 5 papers a year, you could probably at least get on a paper. So that's a good thing. The other thing, so you may hear me or other people use the term PI. That is the principal investigator, AKA the person who runs the lab. So PI is just the scientist who oversees the whole lab. So you may want to look and consider their age. So if you have an old PI, Grandpa Joe, he may not be interested at all in doing research. He may be more so just relaxing and enjoying his basically retirement because he doesn't run a strong research program anymore and he's tenured for life. Or you might have a young person who's, sorry, I totally undersold the benefits of being old. He may be very established and hands off with his research, but he also may be, he or she may be a extremely established person in the field who has a lot of connections and their letter of recommendation will mean a lot. So you definitely want to look at their reputation in association with their age as well. Younger professors may be more hungry. They may be more interested in bringing in new students and more, hungry for publications, but they're not as established. So they may not have as many tools or a bigger network to get papers published in high journals or send you to a friend they know at the top university. So you just kind of need to look at the person who runs the lab and decide whether they seem like a good fit for you as a person, and also if you're an ambitious person and you're looking for the top option, what kind of opportunities you think they can help you get into. And I can talk more about that if you'd like. So the next thing is, once you pick a few, so maybe you go through maybe this 50, you pick 4 or 5 that interest you. Rank them and send out an email one at a time to the top one and then the next one. And what I mean by that is send an email, wait for them to respond. If they say no, then send another email. Because the last thing you want is to send out 4 emails and then they all say yes. And then you have to say, sorry, I'm an idiot. I don't want to work with you anymore. I found another lab. And these people probably know each other because they work together. So I would go one at a time, wait for them to say no to move on to the next one, and expect a low response rate. You can also probably expect a low acceptance rate because sadly, a lot of labs don't like to take in undergrads, but some really like to. So you may be surprised. And the number of, you can probably tell if you look at their lab website and there's like 10 undergrads, they probably like to have undergrads around. So when you do send the email, be brief, just say, hey, I'm Ben Rein. I am a 3rd year, I'm a junior psychology major and I'm interested in your lab. Do you have any available spots? I'm available to work 2 days a week for 4 hours each day, or 1 day a week for 2 hours, whatever. Just tell them, and just be brief. You don't have to go on and on about how interested you are in their lab. They don't care and they're probably very busy. And then of course, I kind of mentioned this before, you should work in the same lab as long as you can. So if you start off in your freshman year and you work in the same lab for 4 years, you're probably going to become pretty proficient in the tools that they use there, which will enable you to actually contribute meaningfully to the research. And when you contribute to the research, your name goes on a paper that gets published because, every paper is a project. Every project is made up of experiments. If you do one of those experiments, then you are an author on the paper. So the best thing that can happen is publish. The next best thing is to publish a paper. The next best thing that can happen is to learn skills. So if you go into a lab and you learn how to do a certain skill that they use, that's great, because when you apply to grad school and you go on your interviews, they'll say, oh, you worked in this lab. Well, what did you learn there? And you could say, I learned how to do qPCR, or I learned how to do whatever. So those are both valuable things. Every graduate program will look for research experience, and not only research experience, but meaningful research experience where you gain something, you are productive, or you learn something. Steve, you want to be my censor? Is there anything in the chat?
Not currently. I'd like to add though, within your emails, make sure to first request a meeting and not outright just say, necessarily, can I work in your lab? Because sometimes a professor will specifically set up a meeting to test you to find out how truly interested you are in that research, rather than just say yes or no to doing research.
Definitely. Good point. Yeah, meetings are good. They will
You've
facilitate.
got a question.
Oh, we have a question?
Would you recommend attaching your resume? I've heard mixed advice on that.
I would, I guess it kind of depends what your resume looks like. By the way, I just found a way to get the chat open, so that's great. If you have oh, Virginia, you're fine. Go for it. I can't see you anyways. So would you recommend attaching your resume? I think that if you have meaningful accomplishments that you want them to see, definitely, yes, it's good, because they will consider the quality of the student they're bringing into the lab, because they don't want to bring in someone who's going to be really difficult to train and doesn't know anything about the topic. If they can see from your resume that you've already worked in another lab, or you got you got an award for something, or you have a good grade in a relevant class, that will help them understand what kind of student you might be. So I think you should definitely plan to attach your resume, and also plan to have, just as an undergrad in general, have a good resume on hand and keep it updated as often as you can, because if you don't, you'll forget and your resume will look like crap. And also, if you're in the sciences, you should really have a CV, which is a curriculum vitae. It's basically a science version of a resume. And actually, if you guys want, I can send my CV. Maybe we can get a few people. We can post them online so you guys can sort of see a couple and maybe even use them as a template. So, all right. I'm going to try how to move this chat.
Just so you're aware, also always spell check your emails to professors and spell check your CV. It's not a good thing if you have bad grammar or bad syntax for your wording.
Yeah, like I said, I just applied to a postdoc today. I just sent in my long, very carefully constructed email and my CV to a very established professor at Harvard to try and work with them for my postdoc. And I sent it, and I was driving home and I realized, no way, wait a minute. And I looked at my CV and I had started to type something and completely forgotten about it because I got distracted and never took it off. So in my CV that I just sent to this very, very incredible scientist, I have like a sloppy error, and I was just like immediately frustrated with myself. Hopefully she won't notice it. So yeah, spell check and double check and triple check before you send. Not that it really matters so much, but it's good to not be sloppy. Okay, how do I increase my chances of getting into grad school / what does a good applicant look like? So from what I've gathered, master's and PhD programs, which I'll add, are different from MD programs, as in, like, if you're going for an MD, you're going to be a doctor that's going to see patients, whereas master's and PhD programs are more science. If you get a PhD, you're Dr. Rein or Dr. whatever, but you actually can't work with patients. So PhDs are just science. Anyways, so what they look for is basically a strong GPA, obviously always helps, relevant coursework, like I mentioned, and by that I mean the classes, and research experience. So what this really boils down to is that they want to see evidence that you will succeed as a grad student. As a grad student, what you're going to be doing is spending half of your time essentially taking classes and half of your time doing research. And the last thing that any graduate program wants to do is admit a student who is going to do really bad and fail out. So, they want to make sure that you're capable of doing research, and they want to make sure that you're capable of handling difficult classes. So if you can show them that, that will definitely increase your chances of getting in. For applications, when you're applying to grad schools, do your research like a lot. Also, so for what I did with my applications was stupid, and you can all learn from it. I thought I was the man. I had a 4.0 GPA. Like I said, I was the president of Psych Club. I thought I was like the king of the world. And I applied to a bunch of really top great programs. and like one fallback, maybe two fallbacks. And I got into none of the programs that I wanted to, none of the top programs. And I now realize that it was because I was a psychology major applying to PhD or neuroscience programs with very little neuroscience coursework or research experience, which makes sense. I mean, why would they bring in someone just because I'm smart at something else? You know, psychology is different from neuroscience. So anyway, so I would definitely suggest apply to like one or two reach schools, you know, like if you have a good application, take your shot at Harvard or whatever you want. But then I would apply to like 4 or 5 good options that you definitely think you should get into, and then maybe 1 or 2 fallbacks. And obviously you can scale that up or down. You know, you can apply to 10 options that you want to get into with 4 fallbacks, or you can apply to 2 good options and 1 fallback, you know, however many applications you can afford and you're interested in taking or setting up. So definitely do your research on the program and like how strong the program is, you know, how many students they take every year. It's good to obviously read up on these things, but I will warn you, the application process is pretty intensive. So get started early also, but you definitely want to write a specific personal statement for each university. I did at least. And what I mean by that is you want to review their faculty list, just like you do to find research opportunities at your own school. You want to look who is there and who you might want to work with for your research work, and mention those people in your application. So I think I say that. Yeah. So, you know, go through and find, you know, 2 or 3 people who you think would be a very good fit for you, and mention, you know, my interests are in autism. Professor Dr. Yan works in autism. I think she would be a really great fit based on my interests and her techniques that she uses, whatever, something like that. So let's see, is there anything else? Okay. So we got a question from Ben Rein, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Ben. My lab got shut down all summer, and I'm still unsure if we'll be allowed to be in the lab throughout the semester year. What would be a good way to look for research positions outside of respective colleges and universities that are really beneficial to our field of interest, not just an internship labeling vials? So that is a question. That's a good question that I actually don't really know the answer to, because for me, all the best and only really research opportunities that I would know of would be at a university.
What you potentially could do, though, is because most programs nowadays are looking for people with data science or dry lab experience to at least learn how to program or something. You could look into taking online courses during that time, or look into contacting people who you know do bioinformatics or image processing research or something like that, so that you can work and you can do research from home. I myself work in a dry lab, so I do most of my research from home. But I know, I mean, me and Ben have collaborated on projects before for quantifying different brain structures, and even outside of that, programming is an immensely useful tool to be able to do data processing. You can also do things like you can talk to biostatisticians, network over that time with people who will be able to help you with your research.
That's a very great answer. Thank you for supplementing me with that, Steve, because I was lost in the sauce. Also, just another thing to clarify, Steve mentioned that he works in a dry lab. The difference, so a wet lab is basically like what I work in, where I work at a bench and I'm working with samples, like touching the biological samples. A dry lab is basically, you don't have that. You're working more so in like on a computer with data. So just in case anyone didn't understand that. So we got a question. I want to go into neuroscience, but my school doesn't have any courses, clubs. What can I do to get experience? So it depends where you are. If you're in like a city or something where you have another research institution nearby. For example, I'm in Buffalo. We have multiple schools here. Let's say if there are no opportunities, you can definitely, Tasha just added, you can definitely look into getting experience or research experience at other institutions. You don't necessarily have to be a student to participate in research at that school. A lot of these positions, you know, in fact, like as a postdoc for me, like I'm not going to be a student. You just kind of like go in and work there. So there's definitely opportunities for that. And I also want to emphasize that research opportunities are available for high school students. So if anyone here is in high school, you can reach out to labs the same way that I described before, to just look for the university, the closest university to you, and look at their faculty, and you can get involved with research at that level. It will be pretty, maybe more so along the lines of like what Ben said, like labeling vials, but you'll still get to go into the lab and meet these people and see what the research is like. We had a high school student join my lab, and she came in and she was like counting neurons in these big images. So, there's always work to be done. So hopefully that was helpful. Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay, so what's it like doing a PhD? I've gotten this question a lot. Okay, let me start by saying there are two types of PhD programs, and probably more, but two that I know of. There are PhDs that are rotation programs, meaning you start by probably the first like semester or two, you spend rotating through different labs. So you might do 3 or 4 rotations, or maybe 2 rotations, where you go and you work in a lab for a few weeks, you see if you like it, then you go in another lab, and then at the end of that period, you choose one of the labs to complete your PhD in. It's really important to know what you're getting into, and it's a really good opportunity for you to meet the people in the lab, see what the research environment is like. Do you get along with everyone? Are you really interested in the work? So that's what I did. My program, and the program Steve's in as well, we have it's called an umbrella program because it covers a whole bunch of departments. It's like pharmacology, neuroscience, anatomy, biochemistry, all sorts of stuff, genetics, bioinformatics. And you start off and you can rotate in any of the labs in any of those departments, and then you choose your path and you go on from there. The benefit of doing a rotation program is obviously, versus direct admit is where you just pretty much, you choose a lab just kind of based off of like the website, or maybe you meet with them before, but you, like the day you start your PhD, you start taking your classes and you start working in a specific research lab. It's a little bit more risky because you don't know what exactly you're getting into, but it can be, if like, for example, if you already did your undergrad at a school and you were working in a lab for a year or two and you realize you want to stay there and do your PhD, definitely it's better to do direct admit into that lab because you already know that you like it there, and you're not going to waste 9 months or whatever doing rotations. So whereas with the rotation programs, you're obviously getting a chance to taste everything, and that's going to be more common, I think. So personally, I would probably recommend rotation programs unless you already know someone. So the main components of doing a PhD, as I mentioned before, are classes, of course. So you'll be taking classes that are both on broad topics like genetics, for example, or molecular or cell biology, and then specific classes. For example, if you're doing a neuroscience PhD, you'll take like neurobiology of disease, or things like that, structural anatomy of the brain, things like that. So it's a mix of both. And you also, it depends on the program, but some programs will have you taking classes the whole time. Some programs will have you taking classes for the first 2, maybe 3 years. And then at some point you meet the requirements, and then you spend all your time doing research. In my program, I took classes the first full year, and then the second year I took like 1 or 2 classes each semester, but I just got the rest of the time to focus on my research. That's pretty rare. There's very few classes for my program, which is kind of odd, and I wish there were more. Okay, then once you're in the lab, basically there's 2 components. There's the technical training and there's the research. So in order to basically do research, you need to understand how to do some very advanced stuff, like like I was saying, like brain surgeries or biochemical techniques or behavioral approaches. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can do in research, and whatever your lab studies or how the tools they use to study or to do the research they do, they'll have to train you on that. So there's a learning period of where you kind of become proficient in those techniques, and then as you gain the skills, you start to do research where you guide your own project. And that's with or without the help of your boss. Some PIs, the lab heads, are very hands-on. They'll be very, hey, do this, and then do that. Or they'll be, my boss, for example, basically said, you want to do this project? I said, sure. And then I met with her, I would just walk in her office, hey, I have a question. I'm trying to do this. It's not working. Any advice? And then it's pretty independent. So every scientist that you'll be working with is kind of different. So PhDs are very unique. They're very diverse, I should say, in that you can have a very different experience depending on where you're working, the type of research you're doing, what kind of personality your boss has. So there's a lot to it. And then of course, presentations. So once you conduct research and you have a research project that's nearing completion or whatever, or it is completed, you'll have the opportunity to present. You go to a conference, you can present. Personally, I love going to conferences. It's like my favorite thing. SFN is Society for Neuroscience. They have a conference every year, and it cycles between Washington, D.C., Chicago, and San Diego. So I've got to go to all three of those places, and my boss pays for it. I get to present a poster. I get to give a talk. It's super cool. You get to meet people. It's a good time. But you can also do presentations within your department, like at your school. And lastly, teaching. I put an asterisk because not all programs require teaching. For example, my program doesn't have a teaching requirement. But as a PhD student, you may be teaching classes, which is also a very valuable opportunity. I definitely encourage teaching. I actually, like I said, my program doesn't have teaching opportunities, but I went to the neuroscience director and asked if I could teach, if I could kind of create a course that I could teach, and whatever, I was able to teach something. It was like part of a class. So let's see. Yeah, doing a PhD can be fun, or it can be not fun. I've heard, there's people who have really bad experiences because they work in a bad lab. And then there's people, like, personally, I've had an amazing PhD. Like, I really like my boss. I really like my lab. It's actually like a lot of fun. There's nothing more rewarding for me than to become really, to really understand a topic and to have something that you care about that you get to work on every single day. So doing research or getting research experience in undergrad is a lot different from getting a PhD. You may not love your research experience in undergrad because it's very, it's not independent. Someone will be telling you what to do, but in your PhD, you get to run your own project, and your success really depends on how much work you put into it. And it's actually a lot of fun, and I care about it. You learn to love it. So like I said, the lab choice is important. The passion for your work is important. Your attitude is definitely important. And it's not even really so much about the kind of person you are or your attitude, but also, like, if you're working with people that you can't stand, your attitude is going to be terrible, and it's going to make your life terrible. So there are just a lot of things to consider. And I'm also happy to talk to people about, like, specific situations. And then also use the resources around you. So you can make your PhD a lot more successful by collaborating with other labs, learning skills that your university offers. Like, maybe in your lab you can't learn a certain technique, but the lab that works next door might be willing to teach you. Also, if you're having a hard time, there are always, usually there's university-sponsored counseling. You can see a therapist and talk about, if you're having trouble, if you're having a hard time. So definitely don't just isolate yourself in your lab. Use everything that you can. So I see Alex posted, I have a master's in experimental psych, 1 publication, 3 poster presentations, 3.5 grade GPA, 2.5 years of research experience. Do you think this is decent for a PhD? GRE is not the best. So I think that's a great, application. I mean, having a publication is great. Where you're located in the author list is important. If you're the first author, that means that you did, like, the majority of the work. If you have a first author paper, most PhD programs should be happy to have you. If you're not the first author or whatever, you're in the middle, still very good. Your 3.5 GPA is very good, I think. 2.5, yeah, I think that's pretty good for a PhD. GRE score, the GRE, the value to applications really is kind of changing. When I was applying, I heard it was like a big deal, but the more kind of programs evolve, they're learning that the GRE may not be the #1 predictor of a good student. So it differs by program. Some may value it highly, some may not. I've got an experience as a Gen Chem lab TA in undergrad. Will that help with grad school applications? Yeah, for sure. Concerning the teaching aspect. Definitely, Ben. I think that's great. Having TA experience in undergrad, also for something like that. So when you have something strong like this, like you've been a TA for a chemistry lab, if I'm on the admissions board, I might see that and think, oh, maybe he graded exams, or maybe you stood in front of the lab and you taught a course. If you have something like that you can, like, really present to them and like use it to shine in your application, put stuff like that in your personal statement. Talk about the experiences you've had and really sell yourself. That's the point of the personal statement. They want to get to know you kind of, but they also want to hear about like the type of person you are, you know, what drives you, what sort of experiences have you had. So if you can emphasize those things in your personal statement, definitely do that.
Also in your CV, whenever you're talking about those type of positions, don't just say that you worked there, tell them exactly what you worked with. So for example, if you've done instrumentation, talk about the type of instrumentation you used. If you've done specific techniques, talk about those techniques, because the harder the techniques and the harder the instrumentation that you've gotten used to using, the more likely you are to be able to learn complex tasks during your PhD.
Definitely. So Virginia said, I just graduated my BS in psychology. I want to go the MD route and become a psychiatrist. 1 internship, 2.5 years of experience as a behavioral specialist, and 1 research project. Should I apply to more research projects or should I try shadowing doctors? From what I've experienced and what I've seen in people who have gone the MD route, I think the value of research experience is a bit limited. I think if you have some research experience, that's great. If you have a lot of research experience, it's still great. I don't think there's a huge difference. Like there's a guy who was working in my lab for like 3 years, and he had 5 or 6 papers, you know, tons of research experience, and he had trouble getting into med school because he had a subpar GPA. So I think that at the end of the day, research experience can only get you so far when applying to MDs because it's not actually what you're going to be doing. For your situation, I would say probably try shadowing doctors. Because you already have some research experience, and by shadowing them, you might also be able to get them to write you a letter of recommendation. And a letter from a doctor is going to be more valuable than a letter from, you know, your psychology professor or whatever when you're applying to MDs.
The one exception to that rule for MDs is if you're trying to go into a pathology residency eventually, because clinical pathologists, they really do like the look of research on your experience, like research experience, specifically with related to digital pathology.
Yeah, definitely. I think the best thing you can really do when you're kind of applying to any sort of program or you have some future in mind, think about what that person does on a daily basis and ask yourself if you have those skills and if they'll be able to tell that from your application, because that's all that really matters. They get tons of applications from smart people. They want to know that you're not only smart, obviously you're smart, everyone's smart that's applying. They also want to know that you're experienced and that you have like relevant hands-on experience if possible. So, okay, I'm going to try and wrap this up kind of quickly. We're nearing 7 o'clock. So what's it like working as a scientist? As I mentioned before, you can go the academia route, which is what I'm doing, meaning you're working in an academic setting like a university, or you can go, in that sense, you'd be a professor, you'd teach classes and you'd run a research lab, or you can go the industry route, which is basically working for some sort of like biotechnology or like a pharmaceutical company, something like that, where you're not working with an academic institution, you're working with a company. I'm not going to talk too much about industry because I don't have hands-on experience. I'll get back to that in a second. Okay, so in academia, your success, basically throughout your entire career, you're applying for research grants, and the research grants from the government or from private foundations, that's what funds your salary, and that's what gives you the ability to hire people who can conduct research in your lab. So you're constantly applying for research grants. There's tons of room for creativity because basically you get to apply for grants, and in the grant you describe what type of research you're going to do. So if you want to study something cool, you apply for a grant. If they fund it, then you have the freedom to explore that topic and anything related to that. This obviously was a problem with my animations, but so as a academic scientist, you wear a lot of hats. So you have to be good at mentoring. You're helping the students in your lab. You're also good at writing. You're writing grants. You're writing papers. You have to be good at science. You're running experiments, or you're helping people run experiments. You're a professor. You have to be good at teaching. You're also a reviewer. You're reviewing people's grants and papers. And you also may have to be a bit of a politician to kind of work your way up through the academic field. If you start working at a university, there might be some politics involved in, becoming friends with the dean and hoping to get, that's not so much of a thing, but some people in academia do get very involved politically, and by that I mean like trying to meet people and use their connections to their advantage and things like that. Another thing that I should add is that there's something called hard versus soft money. In academia, like I said, your grants pay your salary. Every university has a different standard for paying the professors. There's hard money, which basically is a portion of your salary that's paid for by the university, and there's soft money. So let's say if you have your salary is $150,000 a year, the university might pay 33%. So they're paying $50,000. The other $100,000 you have to get from grants. So you need to be constantly applying for grants in order to pay yourself. So that can be kind of stressful. My university has 100% hard money. So everyone's fully funded. You never have to stress about losing your money or anything like that. Okay, and then for academia, it's very competitive. It's very difficult to move through. You know, like I said, I'm applying to postdocs. After my postdoc, I'll have to apply for faculty positions. If I get a faculty position, I'll have to apply for funding. So it is very challenging, but personally, I don't really worry about the competition and how difficult it can be, because like I know that it's what I want to do, and I'm very passionate about my research, and I'm like excited for it every single day. So even if it is a challenge, even if I have to compete with others, it's fine because I'm ready to do that. So, and you should be prepared for, you know, these type of challenges as you move through your career. Industry, I'm not going to say anything because I think in the future I'd like to have a panel discussion on this. So I know there are some members, in fact, probably Jorge, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that, sir, Mr. Davila, an older student who's already have a career in a non-scientific field. I don't know if, non-scientific. I don't know. Certain people are in industry, so I can bring those people in and have them talk about their experience in industry. So let me answer this question. What advice do you have for older students who already have a career in a non-scientific field? How did you choose your research field? So the first question, I'm not really sure. Let me move on to the second question. How did you choose your research field? It's definitely, you kind of just have to be guided by like what sparks your interest naturally. For me, I knew I was interested in the brain, you know, because when I think about, you know, brain, like synaptic transmission in the brain, you know, cells talking to each other, that like gets me super amped up. Whereas if I think about like the physics of this lemon falling, doesn't really get me amped up. That gets some people amped up, and that's kind of just how it is. Everyone's different. You just sort of have to expose yourself to enough research and information, and that can be done online. You know, just look at scientific papers and see what makes you excited. That's going to be your best. That's going to be your best driving factor for deciding what you should do. And if you like what you're doing, you're going to be happy in your career. So obviously, do whatever you're best at and do whatever you love the most.
I can answer the first part in his first question for older students who are already in a non-scientific field. So one of the things that you're going to want to do to make yourself more desirable through your applications is you're going to want to take online courses. You're going to want to learn as many skills outside of your work as possible. So if you can turn around and say you have programming experience, you have experience with SPSS, you have experience with statistics or biostatistics and stuff like that, and that you've been studying that even though you're currently working in a non-scientific field, that'll make you more desirable. The other thing is some colleges or universities offer you the opportunity to do part-time research as a non-student. So you could potentially do that as well.
Thank you, Steve.
Right, thank you. Thanks.
So Tasha said, having new advanced concept explained is always thrilling. When do you expect the first meeting where a research paper is explained to happen? Thank you, Tasha. Hopefully soon. Definitely, I'm hoping for the next meeting, it'll be a networking session, and then the meeting after that will be a presentation. So I hope my current plan is to do Q&A followed by a networking session, followed by like a research presentation, and cycle through those. So every 3 meetings, you know, will be like different. So, and if you guys have other ideas, please send them. Okay, so conclusion, this is important, so everyone pay attention, please. In order to supplement these meetings, this will be super informational. Hopefully you learn something from this, but in order to supplement this with more information and give you the ability to connect with each other and to ask questions with one another and discuss any topic, I created a Facebook group. So I'd love if you guys joined. And the idea is that you'll be able to post like a discussion topic and just say, hey, I'm applying to grad school. Can anyone share their thoughts or share their personal statement? I'd like to see it. I just want to give everyone an opportunity to really talk and, communicate and network with each other however you want and at any time. I don't want it to be limited just to meetings. So I'll send out the link to the Facebook right after this meeting in an email. I'll also send out this PowerPoint, so you can also just click through it here. The other thing, yes.
Just so you know, you might want, whenever you send out the link to join or whatever, you might want to ask, like, do you have a PhD or something like that, so that you can start categorizing people who can talk and stuff.
Yeah, so I have a pretty good gauge of where everyone's at based on the original Google form. I had everyone write like what status, like where are you at, like undergrad, grad school, post-grad. So I definitely, to you members in here who are, experienced in the field or in graduate school, I definitely hope to round up some of you and do it like a panel with grad students, a panel with like anyone in industry. So I definitely want to continue to get everyone involved. Also on Facebook, they have like Facebook chats or something like that, where you can have a video chat with up to 8 people, I think. So if you have a conversation with someone and you think it'd be good to connect, I encourage, again, half of the purpose of ASK is to connect you and help you grow your network. So I encourage you all to talk to one another as much as you can and as much as appropriate for you to get, whatever information you need. Okay, number 2, like I said at the beginning, please invite your friends. I want this to grow. I want to get more and more people involved. So if you know people who might be involved, people in your program, whatever, get them in here, because your friend might have some really useful information that can help my friend, and maybe they'll become colleagues and they work in the same field. The more people are in here, the more we can build and make this connection, this interconnected network, more rich and intense. So here's the Google form. If you wanted to do that, there's also an Instagram link. We have an Instagram where basically we post general things, reminders and stuff. And again, the next meeting will be a networking session. So questions or suggestions? I'm gonna close this out. I also missed Virginia's question. When transitioning from high school to college, they stressed how volunteer experience was great. I finished my BS. Does volunteer experience actually help with higher education? Oh, should I remove that from my CV altogether? That's a good question. You can leave it, you could take it off. It's up to you. If you think it's relevant, I kind of took off some of the more like generic, like not exciting things. But I think it's important to show that you are engaged in volunteer experiences. You don't want them to think that you just sit at home and watch TV all the time. Show them that you get engaged. So I think when you're applying to grad school, that's worthwhile keeping on there.
Some PhD programs also really have strong ties to outreach programs. So I'd also think about like what type of PhD program are you applying to, or what type of research does the PI you're trying to get into does he do? Because if he does outreach programs or outreach programs for sciences, especially, then having volunteer experience is really useful.
So Ben asked about materials. Steve, didn't you used to do materials?
Materials what? So I did chemistry.
Okay, yeah. I thought didn't you work in industry for a little bit and do some like materials?
Yeah, I worked at a precious metal refining company.
So I don't know. I think, Ben, I can't speak specifically to your experience because it may be different in chemistry, but I think that like people will be in the upcoming cycles of grad school applications, the committees will be pretty prepared for people to have limited experience. And if you talk about it in your personal statement, again, the personal statement is an opportunity for you to talk about anything that you can't see from looking at your application. So talk about how I was supposed to have this internship opportunity. It was canceled because of COVID. They will probably be very understanding. I'm sure a lot of people that you'll be competing with during those applications will have similar situations. Steve, did you have anything to add on that? Also, if anyone has other questions, feel free to hang out and ask me or Steve or anyone, one another.
So for the materials things, what you could potentially do is you could look up courses on metallurgy or material. I mean, they do have free courses online through like Coursera for material science. So you could potentially look up some courses on those and just familiarize yourself with some of the main concepts so that whenever you talk to them, you can be more precise about like, this is what I'm interested in doing with materials.
I muted myself. Does anyone have any other questions? I definitely appreciate all you guys being in here. I hope that it was informational. Where are you guys on personal statements versus cover letters?
You need both.
Yeah.
Whenever you're trying to get into a lab, you're going to want a cover letter. Typically, if not a cover letter in and of itself, like a separate file, you can copy and paste a cover letter into your email whenever you're trying to get into that lab. But if you're ever trying to get into industry or out into the field, you're going to want a cover letter that's really amped up and specific towards whatever field you're trying to get into, as well as the actual company. Personal statements, though, you want specific towards the school. You may want specific towards the research that you're trying to do. But for umbrella programs, you also you can leave the field kind of open to interpretation, because you could be like, I'm interested in these different programs, and you want to explore these different programs.
So Tasha said edX is another amazing platform. Yet I actually recently thought, I should really touch up on my neuroscience knowledge, and I started taking a course on edX, and it's pretty good. That's definitely a good way to learn. They also you can like pay for it and get a certificate. I don't really know about if it's worth it. It might be, depending on what you're doing. I personally did the free version, and I just want to learn.
And you could still, even if you don't get a certificate, you could still put it on your CV or your resume and just say that you took this course. And if they ever ask you, do you have proof, you could talk about the course and what it actually taught you.
Yeah, that's so true. I guarantee no one's going to ask you for the certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tasha's right. And I feel like a jerk for saying not to pay for courses. She said that I think the paid certificates are mainly to help fund the platform. So is Felipe still here? So said, will the advice around the STEM academia will be useful if I go down a different route? Yeah, I think so. I mean, all right, Felipe's still here. I think that if you are considering a career in science, it definitely can't hurt to get the experience and just see what it's all about. You might love it. And if you don't, that's fine. I think that when you start to apply for different fields or work in different fields, they will see that you were really passionate and engaged in the field that you were in before, and that probably could help. Also, I think that typically, for example, if I have a neuroscience PhD and I change my mind and I think I want to go into banking or something like that, I'm pretty sure if someone with a neuroscience PhD applies to a bank, they'll probably hire me, I would think. It's still very respectable, and I think people will just assume that, they won't think, oh, this person wasted their time. I think they'll look and say, oh, well, this person, got a good education in whatever they were looking at. So, but obviously I don't really know.
Going off from that, if you're interested in industry, the other thing that you want to do when you're going for your bachelor's degree or your PhD is try to contact some biomedical engineering people, because most of the time biomedical engineering academia or academics, they have had experience in industry and they can tell you about it. They can also they have contacts with industry representatives and things like that to kind of hook you up.
Connections are good, which is why here we are, Anyone else have questions? Anyone else want to just pop in here and introduce themselves? Put you all on the spot. Don't be shy.
I'll do it. I'm Felipe. I'm the one who just asked the question. I had my glasses off. I just got back from work. I was late and I missed the entire beginning part of the meeting, but I'm just so happy to be here.
Thank you, Felipe. What's going on? I mentioned at the beginning, this whole thing was recorded and I'll post it on the Instagram and also on YouTube.
Perfect. And I remember I commented about when someone asked if autism can cause, or vaccines can cause autism. I remember tagging you to back me up.
Oh, that was you. Yeah, thank you. That person was very angry at me. They said that I was spreading misinformation and I was putting everyone in danger by saying that they should get vaccines. And they were like, how dare you?
A neuroscientist tells someone, yeah, you can't get autism from vaccines, and they get mad. This world sometimes, man.
Yeah. Neuroscientist who studies autism. I got a comment today that said, I don't know, I'm almost think it was a joke because the name was Karen, and it said something ridiculous. Like, it was like, vaccines don't cause autism. Like, you are so, or it was like, you've been brainwashed. And then it was like a USA, like an American flag emoji, and like the emoji with like the steam coming out of the nose. Like, and it was like Karen 1969 or something like that. It had to be fake.
No way. Karen, maybe. Possibly.
And then their bio said like Earth is flat. The Karen among Karens.
Excommunicated. They're so far lost.
So anyways, I've got to go. Ben has my contact information if anyone needs to know more about bioinformatics, dry labs, or anything from me. So I'll see you guys later.
Thank you for helping out, Steve. I appreciate it. I'll put Steve's contact info in the email.
Yep.
So anything else? Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right, Jorge, what's up?
Yeah, what's up, man? How you doing? So yeah, I'm in Australia. Just started my neuroscience undergrad. I've already got a career in oil and gas, petroleum engineering, so it's a bit of a change for me. Yeah, I'm not too sure where this is going to take me, but this is what really interests me. So yeah, thanks for this. This is really good.
Definitely, yeah. No, I think it's great that you're getting involved with this kind of thing. I mean, the more resources you use obviously help. So kudos to you for being here, and good luck to you in your transition.
Thanks, man. Cheers, man.
Glad you're joining the dark side of neuroscience.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to introduce themselves? If not, I will terminate this meeting. It's your last chance. All right.
Thanks again, Ben, for hosting the meeting.
For sure. Yeah, I hope that this was informational, and there'll be more to come. So next time will be networking. And also, if you have, so the people who are still in here, if you have recommendations for future events or anything, please, you can direct message me on Instagram. You can email me, whatever. So I appreciate all the input, and I'll definitely use it and consider all of it and try to do anything I can, So, all right.
Hi. Hello.
Hey.
I just want to say that I was really excited about this meeting, and I checked the time zone about like 4 or 6 times because I didn't want to miss it, and it was really great. I'm really excited, and I think this is very, very good because especially now with the COVID-19, we are now like just in our houses and no one are connected, and this kind of projects like change everything. So I'm really, really happy. I mean, I think will be the highest point of my week because I'm really, really happy and excited. And I'm from Brazil, and that's it. Hi.
Thank you so much for saying that. I really, really appreciate that, and it means a lot to me that that I could, brighten your week. I've always been really, really like interested in helping people and providing information and stuff like that. So like, there's nothing in the world that's more satisfying for me than to help someone in their journey. So I'm very grateful for you for saying that. And how do I pronounce your name? I don't want to.
Ayrton.
All right. So I'm definitely going to mispronounce it. Ayrton.
Yeah. On English, it's very like tricky to say Ayrton, but you can say however you want. Or my last name is Sinoch. Sinoch, I think, is more easy though. But however you want or can, that's okay.
Ayrton Sinoch. I'll get it right this time, and next time I'll get it wrong. I promise. So to all the people saying thank you in the meeting, likewise, I thank you for being here. Tasha asked if the networking will only consist of neuroscience folks. No, I definitely want to do everyone. So what I'm going to basically do, I actually learned today that in Zoom, you can pre-establish like breakout rooms. So I'll probably start a meeting and then have breakout rooms based on your interests. So whatever you selected, whether you put psychology, neuroscience, chemistry, whatever, I'll group you into those groups and let you meet each other. And then I think, like I said, we'll be doing networking sessions every 3 meetings. So down the road, I'll do, I'll mix it up where you can meet people from other disciplines and like learn from one another. I'll try to provide some like discussion topics to sort of stimulate the conversation between groups. So hopefully it'll work. We'll see how that goes. Again, I'm figuring it all out as I go. So we'll see what happens when I try to do my first breakout Zoom. It'll probably like destroy the entire app and shut it down, but we'll see. All right. Looks like we're all out of questions. So thanks again to all you. Ayrton. I told you I'd mess it up. I told you. Thank you for what you said. And Ben, thank you all. Virginia, thank you for asking questions. And I guess I'll see you all next time. So thanks again.